Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is in their final seconds of life. Their heart is stopping, their brain is going dark. Or so we used to think. In 2022, scientists got something they'd never had before, an EEG recording of a human brain in the actual moment of death, completely by accident. And what they found broke pretty much everything we assumed about dying. Because instead of shutting down, this man's brain lit up in a pattern that looks almost exactly like dreaming, or remembering, or pulling up a memory in vivid detail. So in this video, we're going deep on three things. What scientists actually recorded in those final seconds. Whether your life really does flash before your eyes. And whether there's a moment where you're technically gone, but your brain is still doing something. Quick side note before we get into it. You know how people who almost die often talk about seeing a tunnel of light? Turns out there's a surprisingly normal explanation for that, and it's not what you think. We'll come back to that one a bit later. So let's start with the case that changed everything. An 87-year-old man, hospital bed, hooked up to an EEG to monitor seizures, when suddenly he has a heart attack. Nobody planned for this. The doctors were just trying to track his brain activity for an unrelated condition. But because the EEG was already running, they accidentally captured 15 minutes of brain activity around his death, including the 30 seconds right before and right after his heart stopped. And here's the wild part. In those final seconds, his brain produced something called gamma wave activity. That's the same type of brainwave linked to high-level thinking, recalling memories, dreaming, deep concentration. It's the same activity your brain shows when you're remembering something meaningful, like a childhood memory or a moment with someone you love. His brain wasn't shutting off. It was doing one last, intense burst of something. Nobody knows exactly what he experienced. But for the first time, we had actual data suggesting the brain might be doing something active and organized in those final moments, not just flickering out. Which brings us to the question everyone actually wants answered. Does your life really flash before your eyes? Turns out, this isn't just a movie trope. Survivors of near-death experiences, people who were technically clinically dead and then resuscitated, have described this exact thing for decades. A rapid, vivid replay of memories, often described as more real and more emotionally intense than normal memory. For a long time, scientists couldn't explain it. But that 2022 case gave us a clue. Gamma waves, the same ones found in that dying man's brain, are also the waves your brain uses during memory recall. So one theory is that as the brain loses oxygen, it may trigger a kind of last call, pulling up stored memories in a rapid, almost uncontrolled way. Not necessarily your whole life, but enough fragments to feel like it. It's not confirmed. But it's the first real biological clue as to why this experience is so consistent across cultures, decades, and completely unrelated people who've never spoken to each other. Okay, now here's the part that gets genuinely strange. Because death might not be a single moment. For most of medical history, dead meant your heart stopped. Simple. But that 2022 recording showed the brain staying active for at least 30 seconds after the heart stopped beating. Other research has found cases of brain activity continuing for minutes after clinical death is declared. So there might be a window, a kind of in-between state, where your heart has stopped, you've been pronounced dead, but your brain is still active, still potentially processing something. We don't know if there's awareness in that window. We don't know if it feels like anything at all. But the line between alive and dead might be a lot blurrier than the moment a heart monitor flatlines. Which actually brings us back to that tunnel of light. Turns out, as the brain becomes oxygen deprived, the retina is often one of the first areas affected, and it tends to lose peripheral vision first, while the center stays active longest. Your brain may be filling in that lost peripheral vision with light or patterns, creating something that looks exactly like a tunnel. Not a glimpse of another world. Just your visual system glitching out in a very specific, very consistent way. So we know the brain might light up, replay memories, and stay active longer than we thought. But here's the thing, none of this tells us whether you're actually aware during any of it. And that question gets even weirder when you look at people who've had zero inner voice their entire lives, because it turns out awareness and that narrator in your head might not be as connected as you'd assume. I actually made a whole video on that, right here.